Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. What do you do when the person you've been giving your heart to suddenly goes quiet? When your phone stays dark, when the message never comes, when the silence feels louder than words? Most people panic, they chase, they beg for attention. But what if I told you that his silence isn't rejection, it's revelation? What if I told you that moment, the moment he ignores you, could be the most powerful turning point of your life if you choose to respond differently? When a man ignores you, your first instinct might be to panic, to wonder what you did wrong, and to begin analyzing every single message, every pause, every sigh in the last conversation. Your brain goes into overdrive trying to decode silence. You think, did I say something that turned him off? Did I come on too strong? Was I not interesting enough? This spiral is natural, but it's also the very thing that makes you feel powerless. What I want you to see is that his silence is not the enemy. Your reaction to it is what will determine whether you step into your power or hand it away. Ignoring can sting because on some level it feels like rejection, and rejection taps into one of the deepest fears we have as human beings, that we're not enough. But here's the truth. Someone's lack of attention doesn't define your worth. It simply tells you about them. When a man ignores you, it says far more about where he is emotionally, about his priorities, or even about his communication style than it does about your value. The question is not, why is he ignoring me? The real question is, how am I going to respond to this in a way that respects me? The worst thing you can do when someone ignores you is to immediately start chasing. You know the pattern: sending multiple texts, checking if he's seen your messages, crafting long explanations to justify why you reached out, convincing yourself you're just being friendly. What you're really doing is trying to pull validation from someone who is showing you in that moment they are not interested in giving it. And every time you chase, you chip away at your own dignity. Instead, I want you to flip the frame. When a man ignores you, see it as information. If someone isn't matching your effort, that is a direct signal about where you stand in their priorities. That's not something to mourn. That's something to celebrate, because clarity is freedom. Clarity saves you from investing more time, energy, and emotion in someone who may not have the capacity or willingness to meet you where you deserve to be met. Think about it. The man who ignores your text but scrolls through social media isn't too busy. He's making a choice. And that choice reveals his interest level. People make time for what excites them, who inspires them, what they value. If he can't be bothered to reply, you've been given the gift of seeing his truth without needing to waste months figuring it out. That silence is honesty disguised as absence. So what do? You shift the energy back to yourself. Instead of asking, why isn't he giving me attention? Ask, where can I give myself more attention? Because your life is not meant to be built around trying to pry open a door someone has shut. Your life is meant to be filled with passion, purpose, friendships, goals, and self-respect that make you magnetic regardless of who notices. When you stop chasing, something powerful happens. You create space. That space does two things. First, it shows him that you are not dependent on his responses to feel valuable. That's attractive. Confidence is always magnetic because it demonstrates that you are whole without anyone else's validation. Second, it gives you time to evaluate him instead of anxiously waiting for him to evaluate you. You get to decide, is this really the kind of man I want in my world? Do I want someone who thinks ignoring is acceptable behavior? Do I want to be with someone who doesn't communicate, who doesn't prioritize connection? Imagine you're interviewing someone for the most important role in your life, the role of partner. Would you hire someone who doesn't show up to the interview? Would you beg them to come back, to please take the opportunity? Of course not. You'd move on to the next candidate, knowing the role you're offering is too valuable to be filled by someone indifferent. That's exactly how you need to treat your love life. You are not auditioning for his affection. He is auditioning for a place in your story. And let's be clear, ignoring you doesn't always mean malice. Sometimes people are emotionally unavailable, distracted, or simply not in a place to give energy to a relationship. But those reasons don't excuse their lack of effort. You deserve someone who doesn't just want you in the moments that are convenient. You deserve someone who wants you in the everyday, in the mundane, in the parts of life that require consistency. So if a man ignores you, lean into your standards. Your standard says, I don't chase, I don't beg, I don't wait endlessly, I invest where my energy is returned. That standard automatically filters out anyone unwilling or unable to rise to the occasion. And when he notices that you're not chasing, that you're not flooding him with messages, that you're continuing to live your vibrant life, he'll either rise to meet you or he won't. Either way, you win. If he comes back with genuine effort, you'll know his interest has been tested. If he doesn't, you've saved yourself from wasting time on a dead end. The beauty of this approach is that it puts you back in control. You are no longer the person frantically refreshing your phone, waiting for a text. You are the person who is out building friendships, pursuing hobbies, crushing goals, and radiating a life that no one, man's silence, could ever dim. That shift in energy is magnetic because nothing is more irresistible than someone who is self-sufficient, grounded, and full of life. Ask yourself this: what kind of woman do I want to be known as? The woman who bends herself into knots trying to win the attention of someone who can't be bothered? Or the woman who walks with grace, who knows her worth, and who refuses to shrink her standards for temporary validation? Every time you choose not to chase, not to explain away his silence, not to beg for attention, you're building that second woman. This is not about playing games. It's not about ignoring him back or trying to manipulate him into responding. It's about clarity and respect. It's about recognizing that silence is communication in itself and responding with dignity instead of desperation. The goal is never to punish him. The goal is to protect you. If he ignores you today, let it remind you that you are not meant to live on breadcrumbs. You are meant for the full feast of love, presence, and devotion that a real partner brings. You cannot receive that if you're busy chasing someone who can't even send a reply. When you understand that, his silence stops being rejection. It becomes redirection. A redirection back to yourself, back to your standards, back to the abundant life waiting for you when you stop chasing and start choosing. When you start to see his silence as redirection, you step into an entirely different mindset. You're no longer asking, why doesn't he want me? You begin asking, what do I want? What am I looking for? Who deserves the space in my life? That shift is profound because it puts you back in the driver's seat. Instead of being at the mercy of someone else's attention, you become the one setting the tone. Most people fall into the trap of attaching their self-worth to how someone else treats them. If he texts, you feel beautiful. If he calls, you feel valued. If he ignores you, you feel invisible. But here's the truth. Your value is constant. It doesn't rise when he notices you, and it doesn't fall when he doesn't. The only thing that changes is your perception, and perception is something you can train. When he ignores you, train your mind to interpret it differently. Instead of saying, this means I'm not lovable, try saying, this means he's not my person. Instead of saying, this must mean I wasn't enough, try, this must mean he wasn't capable of showing up. The words you use matter. The story you tell yourself in those moments of silence can either drain you or empower you. Choose the story that builds your strength, not the one that breaks your spirit. I want you to imagine for a moment that your life is a beautiful home. Every room represents a part of you, your passions, your talents, your kindness, your humor, your intelligence, your dreams. When a man ignores you, it's as if he stands outside your house and refuses to step in. He doesn't ring the doorbell, doesn't knock, doesn't even peek inside to see the treasures that lie within. Why would you chase after him and beg him to enter? Why would you run outside, waving frantically, pleading for him to notice? That only leaves your home unattended. Instead, stay inside, tend to your rooms, light the candles, open the windows, and keep building the beauty within. The right person will not need convincing to walk through the door. They'll see the light shining out and come in willingly. When you cling to someone who ignores you, you miss opportunities to connect with those who won't. You block the flow of energy that could bring in people who are eager to communicate, to show up, to invest. Life has a funny, way of rewarding space. When you let go of someone who's not matching your energy, you create room for the person who will. But that only happens when you're brave enough to stop clinging to the silence. Sometimes we fear letting go because we think, what if I never find someone else? What if this was my only chance? That scarcity mindset is poison. It convinces you to settle, to tolerate behavior that chips away at your dignity. The truth is, love is not scarce. Attention is not scarce. There are countless people out there who are ready to connect, to love, to commit. But you won't see them while you're busy staring at the back of someone who's walking away. You have to start asking better questions. Not why is he ignoring me, but why am I tolerating this? Why am I lowering my standard? Why am I placing so much value on someone who has shown me so little? Those questions sting, but they lead you back to empowerment, because once you realize that you are the one who chooses what you allow, you reclaim all the power you thought he had. Let's be real. Sometimes his silence is not about you at all. Maybe he's dealing with his own insecurities, distractions, or emotional immaturity. But that doesn't change what it means for you. Because whether his silence comes from disinterest or dysfunction, the outcome is the same. You're left without the connection you deserve. That's why analyzing his reasons is a waste of your precious time. What matters is the result. If he can't meet you, then he's not your match right now. This is where many people make a mistake. They see silence as a challenge. They think, if I can just prove myself, if I can just be patient enough, if I can just win him over, he'll finally see my value. That is the fast track to exhaustion and heartbreak. Because love isn't earned through convincing. Love is recognized. The right person doesn't need a sales pitch to see your worth. They feel it instinctively and they act accordingly. Think of it like this. If you were selling the most exquisite diamond in the world, would you try to persuade someone who insists it's just a piece of glass? Of course not. You'd move on to the person who knows what a diamond is worth. The same applies here. You are the diamond. If he can't see it, that's not a reflection of your shine. That's a reflection of his vision. This is why your focus needs to shift from him to you. Instead of pouring energy into someone's silence, pour that energy into growth. Develop yourself, expand your passions, build your friendships, nurture your body, sharpen your mind. The stronger and fuller your life becomes, the less space you'll have for someone who doesn't add to it. And paradoxically, the more magnetic you become to those who are ready to meet you where you are. But let me be clear. The point is not to grow just to attract him back. The point is to grow because your life is worth more than waiting in someone else's shadows. When you invest in yourself, you stop needing external validation to feel alive. And that self-sufficiency is what makes you radiant. There's another layer to this. Often when a man ignores you, you begin to question your instincts. You think, but we had such a great connection, I could feel it. Was I wrong? No, you weren't wrong to feel a connection, but a connection alone is not enough. Chemistry without consistency is chaos. Sparks without commitment are just distractions. You need both, the excitement and the reliability. If you only have one, you don't have a relationship. You have a fantasy. So the moment he starts ignoring you, that's your cue to wake up from the fantasy and look at reality. The reality is not in what he said that one night when things felt magical. The reality is in what he does consistently. Does he show up? Does he follow through? Does he treat you as a priority? Silence is its own answer, and that answer frees you from living in illusions. The more you pray, Katis responding with dignity, the stronger you become. At first, it might feel unnatural not to chase. It might feel strange to sit in the discomfort of silence without rushing to fill it. But every time you resist the urge to chase, you build a new muscle, the muscle of self-respect. And like any muscle, the more you train it, the stronger it gets. Soon it becomes natural. You no longer feel the urge to beg for attention because you know your worth doesn't depend on anyone's response. And when you reach that point, everything shifts. You no longer attract men who thrive on your insecurity. You no longer tolerate half efforts or excuses. You radiate a standard so clear that only the right kind of people gravitate toward you. His silence, instead of being a wound, becomes a filter. It weeds out those who are not ready for the level of love you're prepared to give. So when he ignores you, don't see it as rejection. See it as revelation. It reveals his capacity, his priorities, his interest. And once you see that clearly, the only thing left to do is decide whether that aligns with your standard. If it doesn't, you don't chase, you don't beg, you simply move forward. And in that forward motion, you reclaim your dignity, your energy, and your power. And in that forward motion, you reclaim your dignity, your energy, and your power. But the journey doesn't end there, because once you reclaim it, the real work begins protecting it. It's easy to fall back into old patterns, to slip into the habit of overanalyzing, to convince yourself that maybe this time the silence means something different. But protecting your power means committing to a new way of responding, even when the old way feels familiar. Protecting your power starts with boundaries. Boundaries are not about controlling him. They're about defining what you will and will not accept. If someone ignores you, your boundary might sound like this: I invest in people who invest in me. You don't even have to say those words out loud. You live them. You show them through your actions. You stop chasing. You redirect your energy. You let the boundary enforce itself. And the beauty of this is that boundaries are magnetic. When people see that you're not afraid to walk away, you immediately command more respect. But here's where many people get stuck. They confuse boundaries with ultimatums. A boundary is not, if you ignore me, I'll block you to teach you a lesson. That's an ultimatum designed to manipulate. A boundary is, if you ignore me, I'll naturally drift away because I don't invest in people who don't show up. That's not punishment. That's self-respect in action. And it's incredibly freeing because you're no longer in the business of changing people. You're simply in the business of choosing wisely. Choosing wisely requires a deep shift in perspective. Instead of measuring your worth by who chooses you, you start measuring your life by who aligns with you. Ask yourself, does this person's behavior align with the kind of love I want? Does their silence align with the partnership I deserve? When the answer is no, you don't have to create drama. You don't have to over-explain. You simply let go. And in letting go, you make space for the yes. The yes is the person who calls when they say they will. The yes is the one who doesn't leave you wondering if you matter. The yes is the one who is consistent, not just in the honeymoon phase, but in the day-to-day. The yes is the one who sees your value without needing you to prove it. And you'll never meet the yes if you're busy holding on to the no. That's why responding to silence with grace is not just about saving your self-esteem in the moment. It's about saving your future from being wasted on someone unworthy. But let's dig deeper into why silence hurts so much. Silence feels like abandonment. It taps into childhood wounds, into old stories of being overlooked or left behind. That's why it can feel so devastating. Even if you only knew this person for a short time, it's not just about him, it's about every moment in your past where you felt unseen. Recognizing this helps you separate the wound from the person. You can say, this hurts because it touches something deeper in me, but I will not confuse my old wounds with his silence. His behavior is about him, not about my worth. That awareness is how you break cycles. Breaking cycles means refusing to repeat the same story. If your pattern has always been to chase, to explain, to cling, then your growth is in doing the opposite. When you feel the urge to send that long message, pause. When you feel the urge to check his social media, pause. When you feel the urge to replay every word of your last conversation, pause. In that pause lies your power, because in that pause you give yourself the chance to choose a new response, and each new response creates a new identity, one of strength, patience, and self-assurance. There's another truth you need to embrace. The right person for you will never leave you confused about where you stand. Read that again. Confusion is not a hallmark of love. Confusion is a hallmark of inconsistency. If you constantly have to decode someone's silence, you're not in a relationship, you're in a guessing game. And life is too short to spend it guessing. Imagine the peace you'd feel if you only invested in people who made you feel secure. Imagine waking up every day without the pit in your stomach, without the endless wondering, without the desperate need for clarity. That peace is available to you, but it begins with making choices that align with it. And that means walking away from anything that disrupts it, including someone's silence. Now let's flip the script. Instead of seeing silence as loss, see it as a filter. Every time someone ignores you, they're filtering themselves out of your life. They're saving you from future heartbreak, from wasted years, from settling for less. They're doing you a favor, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment. Because would you rather be ignored now or 10 years down the line when you've built a life around someone who was never fully present? Their silence now spares you pain later. This is why gratitude becomes a powerful tool. Instead of resenting the silence, you can say, thank you for showing me early. Thank you for revealing your capacity. Thank you for freeing me to move on sooner rather than later. Gratitude transforms the sting into wisdom. It helps you release resentment and carry forward only the lesson. And the lesson is always the same. You are worth showing up for. You are worth effort, attention, and presence. You are worth being chosen fully, not partially. You are worth love that is consistent, not conditional. When you embody that belief, you stop negotiating your worth in the marketplace of half-hearted attention. You stop settling for crumbs when you were born for the feast. But here's something else to consider. Sometimes silence tests you, not because the other person intends to test you, but because life is asking, do you truly believe in your worth, or will you crumble the moment someone withholds attention? The test is not about him. The test is about you. It's about proving to yourself that you can stand strong, that you can hold your standard, that you can trust yourself even in uncertainty. Every time you pass that test, you grow stronger. Growth, however, is uncomfortable. Silence forces you to sit with discomfort, and in that discomfort, you meet yourself. You meet the parts of you that crave validation, the parts of you that fear abandonment, the parts of you that still doubt your value. Facing those parts is not easy, but it's necessary, because when you face them, you heal them, and once they're healed, silence no longer has power over you. This is where the transformation happens. You move from being someone who fears silence to certain, only one who uses it. Silence becomes your mirror. It shows you what you need to heal. It shows you where you've grown. It shows you how strong you've become. And when you start to embrace silence instead of fearing it, you become unstoppable. Because then you're no longer playing defense in relationships. You're not reacting to what others do. You're leading. You're setting the tone. You're saying, this is who I am. This is what I bring. This is what I expect. And that kind of energy changes everything. It attracts people who are aligned and repels people who aren't. It makes your life cleaner, your relationships clearer, and your heart lighter. So the next time a man ignores you, pause. Breathe. Remind yourself, this is not rejection. This is revelation. This is redirection. This is protection. And in this moment, I get to choose. Will I chase? Or will I claim my worth? Will I settle for crumbs? Or will I hold out for the feast? Those choices define you far more than his silence ever could. Those choices define you far more than his silence ever could. Because in the end, it's not about whether someone else sees your worth. It's about whether you see it, whether you protect it, whether you embody it so fully that no act of ignoring can shake it. And that begins with the smallest, quietest decisions you make when no one is watching. When you wake up in the morning and resist the urge to check your phone for his name, you're reinforcing your power. When you choose to go out with friends instead of staying home, waiting for a text that may never come, you're reclaiming your joy. When you decide to invest in your passions instead of in someone's absence, you're teaching yourself that your life will always be bigger than another person's inconsistency. These small acts build a fortress around your self-worth, and that fortress is what keeps you strong when silence comes. It's knocking again. Let's talk about that fortress. It's not built in a day. It's built with repetition, with discipline, with self-awareness. It's built by choosing not to interpret someone's silence as your failure. It's built by reminding yourself daily that you are more than enough. It's built by curating a life that excites you so much that you don't need anyone else's validation to feel alive. And the stronger that fortress becomes, the less tempting it is to chase after someone who disappears. Because here's the secret, chasing is not about love, chasing is about fear. It's the fear that if you don't run after them, you'll lose your chance at connection. It's the fear that if you don't keep reminding them of your existence, you'll fade into nothing. But connection built on fear is not real connection, it's dependency. Love doesn't thrive in dependency. Love thrives in freedom, in mutual choice, in two people walking toward each other willingly, not one sprinting while the other stands still. That's why ignoring is such a powerful revealer. It shows you the dynamic immediately. If you feel you have to chase, you already know the balance is off. You already know you're carrying more than your share, and relationships built on imbalance eventually collapse. Better to see it now, in the silence, than years later, when the cracks have turned into fractures. So the real question becomes, how do you handle the silence without letting it consume you? You shift your focus. You take the attention you were giving to him and you redirect it to yourself. You create rituals of self-respect. Instead of rereading old messages, you write in a journal about your goals. Instead of scrolling through his social media, you read a book that expands your mind. Instead of waiting for his call, you call someone who lifts you up. These acts don't just distract you, they retrain your nervous system to a SOC. Create fulfillment with your own actions, not his responses. And as you do this, something incredible happens. You start to feel lighter. You start to realize that his silence doesn't actually have the power to dictate your mood. You start to notice how much control you've always had, how much beauty there is in your own company, how much strength you've been overlooking in yourself. That's when you know you've crossed the threshold from being controlled by silence to being liberated by it. But let's be honest, this journey isn't smooth. There will be moments when you want to break your own rule, when you want to send that message, when you want to give just one more chance. And in those moments, don't beat yourself up for feeling weak. Recognize it for what it is, a craving. Just like any craving, it doesn't define you, it passes. The urge to reach out is just your mind's way of seeking comfort in what's familiar, even if it's harmful. If you can ride out that wave without acting on it, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than your impulses. And each time you succeed, the cravings grow weaker. This is how resilience is built, not by never feeling tempted, but by refusing to let temptation dictate your choices. Resilience is built by choosing the long-term respect over the short-term relief. Because yes, sending that text might give you a momentary sense of connection. But when the silence returns, the pain doubles. When you respect yourself enough not to reach out, the pain may linger in the short term, but it transforms into pride. Pride that you stayed true to your worth. Pride that you honored your boundary. Pride that you didn't break your own heart just to feel a flicker of attention. And let's go deeper, because silence is not just about relationships. Silence is everywhere in life. People will ignore your talent. They'll ignore your effort. They'll ignore your kindness. And every time that happens, you're faced with the same choice. Will I chase their recognition, or will I continue to shine regardless? If you can master this in your love life, you can master it everywhere. You can walk into your career, your friendships, your family dynamics with a sense of groundedness that doesn't waver just because someone doesn't clap for you. That's why this lesson is so valuable. It's not about one man. It's about you building the kind of character that can't be shaken by anyone's inconsistency. It's about cultivating an identity so strong that silence becomes background noise. Because once you reach that level, you stop living reactively. You stop waiting for people to validate you. You stop bending yourself to earn attention. Instead, you live proactively. You build, you grow, you love, you thrive, and the world begins to orbit around your energy, not the other way around. Remember, someone ignoring you does not mean you're forgettable. It means they're not capable of seeing what's unforgettable about you. Their blindness does not erase your brilliance. It only reveals their limitations. And the sooner you accept that, the freer you become. You stop taking responsibility for their shortcomings. You stop carrying the burden of their silence. You return that weight to where it belongs, with them. And in doing so, you become lighter. You begin to walk differently. You stop scanning the room for who's paying attention to you and instead carry yourself like someone who doesn't need to be noticed to know their worth. And ironically, that's when people start to notice you even more. Because confidence without arrogance, self-respect without hostility, that combination is magnetic. So if silence feels unbearable, let it teach you. Let it teach you patience. Let it teach you detachment. Let it teach you resilience. Let it teach you that you can survive without someone else's validation. Because once you truly know that, you'll never again settle for the scraps of someone's half-jittered attention. You'll never again chase what runs from you. You'll never again confuse silence with loss. And the greatest part, once you've learned this lesson, silence no longer triggers fear. It triggers clarity. You see it, you acknowledge it, and you move on without hesitation. That's freedom. That's power. That's love for yourself in action. And nothing, no man, no relationship, no silence can take that away once you've claimed it, aimed.